Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we're going to look at the AWS platform from a 10,000 foot overview. Now this is a real photo. Most of you may or may not know this, but this is a photo that was taken in February of 2018. This is when Elon Musk sent his Tesla Roadster to Mars. It actually overshot Mars and went to the asteroid belt. And this is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference here. You can see on the screen it says, "Don't panic." So we're going to have a look at AWS. We're going to have a brief look at all the different high-level services and some lower-level services. Don't panic, because there's an awful lot of services, and you do not need to know every single service to pass your exam. I would wager now that there's very few people on the planet who know every single service in a lot of depth, just because there are so many. So please do not panic. So let's go and have a look at the AWS console in 2015. And this is what it looked like. And basically, when I first started recording the A Cloud Guru lectures in 2015, I'd go and I'd talk through every single service. So what EC2 is, what Lambda is, what S3 is. And the reason I did that was because all of these services were relevant, more or less, to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. Let's have a look at what it looks like in 2016. 2016, you can see that we've got more services. So we've got things like machine learning, we've got workmail, we've got a whole bunch of new services that are being added, like Elastic Transcoder, for example. And these services actually weren't all that relevant to the exam, but I'd go through and explain what they were anyway. This is what the console looked like in 2017, so we're getting more and more and more services. And when I started to record my lectures and talk about every single one of these services, the course was getting to be about an hour and a half long just on this section. And a lot of these services are no longer relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So let's have a look at what the console looks like today. So this is what the console looks like today. Don't worry, in the next lecture we're going to look at how you can sign up to the console using free tier. So if you haven't already signed up, I'll show you how to do that in the next lecture. And if you want to see all the services, you can click up here and go services, and you can group them or you can do them from A to Z. And if we scroll down, there's an awful lot of services. And if I was to go through and explain what each individual service was, let's say for 30 or 40 seconds, the whole course is this whole section of the course is probably going to take 2.5 hours. And I'm just going to be wasting a lot of your time because a lot of these lower level services are just simply not relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. Things like Amazon Connect or Pinpoint or let's have a look, Media Convert, any of these media services, Deep Lens, for example. None of these are relevant to the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So what I am going to do now is, in this lecture anyway, is I'm just going to go through and just talk about the high-level services. So compute, storage, databases, migration and transfer, etc. And then we're going to look at the platform from that perspective. And then I'm going to show you what is relevant to the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. One other thing I will show you is up here, you can change what region you're in, and we're going to have a look at what the different regions are in a second and what the difference is between a region and an availability zone. For the rest of this course, I would recommend that you use the US East Northern Virginia region. The reason for that is this is the oldest region and this is where all the new services come out first. This is also the region that actually goes down the most as well. So when you're building your production workloads, maybe use US East Ohio or some of the other US West ones, because Northern Virginia tends to go down once a year. But who knows, maybe that's all in the past. So let's have a look at the AWS high-level services, and we'll start with the global infrastructures. The global infrastructure is what we've just been talking about. It's the regions around the world in which AWS is based. On top of the global infrastructure sits a whole bunch of high-level services. So we've got compute. Examples inside compute might be EC2, might be Lambda, etc. And we are going to cover those off in the course. Storage, we've got things like S3. So this is where you put files into buckets. We've got different services in there, like EFS, for example. Again, we're going to cover it off in the course. Databases, this could be relational databases such as RDS. This could be non-relational databases such as DynamoDB. Migration and transfer is a way of getting things to and from AWS. It includes things like a Snowball, which we are going to cover. Network and content delivery is basically one of the most sort of fundamental parts of AWS. So things like VPCs, virtual private clouds, as well as CloudFront, their CDN. We're going to cover that in the course. Developer tools is not really relevant for the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. It is covered, as you might guess, in the Developer Associate exam. Robotics, blockchain, and satellite are all new high-level services that were released at reInvent for 2018. Not covered in the course. I really hope there's a robotics specialty at some point. That would be super cool. But it is a very, very new high-level service, not relevant for the exam. Management and governance we will cover. Media services we won't. Machine learning, so this is all the sort of AI, things like SageMaker, for example. You basically just have to be highly sort of aware of the different AI and ML capabilities for the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. They may ask you a question about one or two services, but you don't need to know it in a lot of depth. Where it does come up is in the new machine learning specialty cert, which I did actually just a couple of weeks ago, and it is super, super tough. We've then got analytics, we've got security, identity, and compliance. Security, identity, and compliance we will cover off in the very next section of the course, where we start to log into identity access management. We're going to start creating our users, groups, and roles. We then have mobile, not really relevant. AR and VR, so AR is augmented reality, VR is virtual reality, again, not really relevant. Application integration, as well as AWS cost management. Cost management can be a part of the Solutions Architect Associate exam. It's a big part of the cloud practitioner. We then have customer engagement, business applications, desktop streaming, IoT, and game development. So let's go ahead and start with the fundamentals, and let's look at AWS global infrastructure. So what's the difference between a region, an availability zone, and an edge location? So we'll start with the global infrastructure. So there's currently 19 regions and 57 availability zones around the world as of December 2018. And there's going to be 5 more regions and 15 more availability zones for 2019 that are currently announced. Of course, there's going to be more. Don't worry, you're never going to be tested on the number of regions and availability zones, but it is important to understand the differences between them, and also where they are, basically. Where's your local region? So before we look at a region, let's look at this. This is a data center, and some of you may have seen data centers before, some of you may have not. And an availability zone is essentially just a data center. That's what I want you to think of an availability zone as. So an availability zone is a facility somewhere out in the country, or it could be in the city, and inside that facility is a whole bunch of computer stuff. So servers, we've got SANs, we've got switches, we've got firewalls, we've got load balancers, we've got storage. Basically anything to do with cloud sits inside our data centers. So a data center is just a building filled with servers, and an availability zone is essentially a data center. Now, an availability zone actually may be several data centers, but if they're really close together, they're going to be counted as one availability zone. So one availability zone could be 2 or 3 data centers that are all within, say, a couple of miles of each other. That way, if there is a flood, it might take out all 3 facilities, so it might take out that availability zone. But then you'll have another availability zone that will be 100 miles away, and if it floods in one area, it's not going to affect the other area. So you're going to have different availability zones in different regions. So what is a region? Or a region is just simply a geographical area. So each region consists of 2 or more availability zones. So we have the London region, we have the Northern Virginia region, we have the Oregon region, we have Sydney region, Singapore region, we have the Tokyo region, etc., etc. So regions are just distinct geographical areas, and each region will always consist of 2 or more availability zones. An availability zone is simply a data center, and a data center is simply a building that's filled with computer stuff. So pretty simple stuff. So let's have a look at today's regions. We've got North America. North America consists of a whole bunch of different regions. So we've got Northern Virginia, Oregon, US West. We've got the Central region, which is Canada. US West that I'm talking about here is actually just for GovCloud. So GovCloud, you can see there's GovCloud US West and GovCloud US East. This is for government customers only. This is not for private corporations. So do bear that in mind. We then got the US East, which is in Ohio, and we've got US West in Northern California. We then down here have a whole bunch of different edge locations, and you're always going to have more edge locations than you will have regions. You might be thinking, well, what's an edge location? Well, edge locations are endpoints for AWS, which are used for caching content. So typically this consists of CloudFront, which is Amazon's content delivery network, and we're going to have a look at that in the S3 section of the course. But it's a way, let's say you've got a big file and you've got a user who's sitting in Sydney and the server that they're trying to get the file from is in New York. Basically, what happens is that user downloads it from New York. It is then cached inside the Sydney edge location. And then if somebody else from Sydney then tries to download that file, they don't need to get that file from New York. They can actually just get it from this Sydney edge location. And again, I'll cover this off in more detail when we go and do the S3 section of the course. What's important is that you understand that an edge location is not a region. It's actually just a sort of a smaller location that AWS have, and it's used for caching content. And there's always going to be more edge locations than there are regions. Currently, there's over 150 edge locations around the world. Let's have a look at South America. We've got a region in Sao Paulo, and then we've got a whole bunch of different edge locations around Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo as well. We then have the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we've got the Irish region, which is one of the oldest regions inside Europe. We've got the London region, we've got the Frankfurt region, and the Paris region. We've got a whole bunch of new regions that are coming in EMEA. So we've got regions in Cape Town, in Sweden, in Italy, that are all coming online as well. And then we have a whole bunch of different edge locations there. In APAC, we've got the Singapore region, the Tokyo region, Osaka region, Sydney region, Seoul region, Mumbai region, Beijing region, and the Ningxi region. And then we've got a whole bunch of different edge locations as well. So what is it you need to know in order to pass your Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam? So we had a look at all these different high-level services. I'm no longer going to go into each individual service and explain, what SageMaker is or what EC2 is or what Elastic Transcoder is. We will go and explain the most relevant services throughout the course that will help you pass your exam, but we're not going to cover every single service on the AWS platform because that would be an entire course all unto itself. So what is it we need to know to pass our Certified Solutions Architect exam? Well, why don't we just start with what we don't need to know? So we don't need to know developer tools. We don't need to know robotics or blockchain or satellites. We don't need to know media services. We don't need to know mobile. We don't need to know AR and VR, application integration. We don't really need to know cost management. We kind of do a little bit. That's a bit of a touchy one, so I've made it fall off. But we will cover cost control on AWS because that is an important part of being a certified solutions architect. We don't need to worry about customer engagement, business applications, and IoT or game development. So these are the high-level services that you should, focus on in order to pass your exam. And of these high-level services, there's a bunch of core services. And these are the bread and butter of passing your AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. So we've got security, identity, and compliance, which we're going to do in the very next section of the course. We have compute, we have storage, we have databases, and we have network and content delivery. Compute is mostly just around EC2 and Lambda. Storage is going to be all around S3. Databases is going to be mostly RDS, as well as some DynamoDB and some Redshift as well. And I'll explain, don't worry if all these sound like foreign languages, we are going to learn what they are throughout the course. Network and content delivery is all Route 53, which is Amazon's DNS service, as well as VPCs, which is the way, it's like virtual private cloud. It's basically like a virtual data center where you're going to build everything. And basically, if you know Route 53 and you know VPCs inside out, you stand a very, very good chance of passing this exam. And like I said, security, identity, and compliance is going to be in the very next section. And in particular, you need to know identity access management inside out to have a good chance of passing your exam. So what are my exam tips? So you've learnt an awful lot already. Just understand the difference between a region, an availability zone, and an edge location. A region is a physical location in the world which combines two or more availability zones. And so you have a London region, you have a Sydney region, a Singapore region, etc. An availability zone is one or more discrete data centers, each with redundant power, networking, and connectivity housed in separate facilities. And then an edge location is just an endpoint for AWS, which is used for caching content. Typically, this consists of CloudFront, which is Amazon's content delivery network, and we're going to learn about that in the storage section of the course. So that is it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture, where we're going to sign up to an AWS free tier account.